Hello, everyone, and welcome to the weekend wrap up with myself, Michael Nauss from StatsEdgeTrading.com. What we do here at the end of every week, Christmas or not, we take a look at the weekly charts, we zoom out a little bit, see where we are in the markets. I share some ideas I have of different names going into next week and potentially how I would trade those names if and when they set up. Talk about what we could see in the next week and do that for crypto, FX, stock market, and some underlying stocks as well. So, as always, grab your holiday beer, go over to StatsEdgeTrading.com, sign up for the email list there. Make sure I can email you these videos so you'll never miss them. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everyone. All right, now, as always, we're going to get started here with Bitcoin. Just exactly what you would want to see if we were going to get a continuation out of this range. We had massive week last week, big pop up. Again, I've been long this. I have no reason to get out yet. We had a negative week last week, but we just retraced that, right? If we go into the daily chart here, that kind of looks like a bear flag. So anytime you see this, I've heard it called a red bar ignored. I've heard it called a doji sandwich, but a strong green day followed by an inside red day followed by a strong green day, the immediate next candle after breaking that high. If you always zoom into that, it's going to look like a bull flag, right? So that's what I'm looking at right now. Right now, my stop would be up below these lows, maybe looking to add more if we end up breaking out of this zone decisively, just continuing to kind of pyramid up, which pyramiding up, for people who don't know, means I took my biggest position at the bottom, but each time we break up and I can break out and I can move my stop up to a level below it, well then if I buy a little bit more and then it comes and stops me out, well I only lost a little bit on that position. The fact that I was able to move that stop up was really all I needed, right? So as that goes and I continue to buy little bits more, eventually it will roll over and I'll get stopped out. But again, the biggest position at the bottom will make up the lion's share of the gain, and all the ads I took on the way up will be fantastic, hopefully. So we have this on Bitcoin. Again, as long as we're above these prior lows, that's great. Even if we break those, I would imagine a pullback to this 35,000 would be the only level that I'd be super interested in. Below then it kind of looks like this was a failed breakout. So we got to keep an eye on that. Ethereum, I'm still watching this anchored VWAP right here on Ethereum, which I drew right at the all-time highs. You can see it was resistance right here, resistance for a while right here, and now we're acting as support. So I've been talking about how I've been in Ethereum for a while. I got out on a scary move and actually looking to get back in if we can break above these highs. This is obviously the worst case stop. So if we can just get a break above those highs, that's what I'm interested in on Ethereum. But overall, they look good. And a lot of the reason is if we go to the dollar index, we had another down week in the dollar index. Talked about this a few weeks ago, a bounce up to this level right here, and then we started to sell back off. Now, what's interesting is if I take this zone, I kind of expand it out like this, and I include these lows right here and this low right here, we're coming into an area of demand now, of demand. So if we get into this area, I wouldn't be surprised if we bounce off or we start to chug around that area. That would kind of change the picture for everything else. But as long as the dollar's moving lower, that's bullish for stocks, it's bullish for Bitcoin, it's bullish for anything denoted in the dollar. Speaking of things denoted in the dollar, let's take a look at gold here. Continuing to look great. I took a little bit of gold today, actually, as we broke out. If we go into the daily chart right here, you can see we broke out of these congested highs right here. Took a nice long there, hopefully looked like a genius earlier in the day. Kind of came back down to that break-even point. So will be interesting to see if we can get some continuation from here. Again, looking at the weekly chart, we're still holding above these prior highs. And as long as we're holding above these prior highs, that's super interesting to me. You can see we had this bottoming tail that got reversed the next week. As long as we're holding that, that's what's interesting here to me. Aussie CAD is something I watch because, again, oil is not a factor with these things. Click on that so I get the drawing tool. This anchored VWAP from this high, we're holding above this. Into the daily chart, I'm looking for a hold. I talked about this on Wednesday. A close above this level. We hit that again and backed off, so we didn't get that today. But I am still watching that. Speaking of Aussie, we have Aussie yen. So Aussie yen is an arbitrage, interest rate arbitrage. For people who didn't know, that's why I watch it so much. Australia has historically higher interest rates, and yen is historically low. So there's what called the carry trade. There's no need to get into it in detail. If you guys want me to make a video about that, I can. But basically, people in Japan will take out loans in Japan. They'll move that money to Australia, and then they'll buy bonds there. And if there's a spread there to be had, then that's interesting. So what will happen is, as these two countries change their currency, you get a kind of a move there. So this is an interest rate play. That's why I'm always watching this particular currency. And you can see hitting this level, we broke down pretty violently 2 weeks ago, and now we've been rallying back up to that. I'm interested in shorting on a lower time frame if we start to fail off of this level in Aussie yen. So we have euro pound here. We have euro pound right there. Same kind of play on this one, right? We had two pretty dramatic down weeks, and then we popped up into this zone. If we start to get weak in this zone, I'm going to look for a short on euro pound right there. We also just have euro, just plain old euro dollar. Again, it's going to look the opposite of the Dixie. Nice looking breakout here. Nothing to say, hey, we're going to fail here. Just noting that there is some resistance up in this zone. Some relative weakness in the Kiwi, for those who follow. Kiwi dollar finally breaking out of this zone, but over the last few weeks, there's been some great strength here. But overall in this weekly chart, some relative weakness. Last currency before we get into the stocks, we have dollar CAD, and dollar CAD is coming right down to a level of support. So on the shorter term time frame, I'm going to be watching dollar CAD to see if we can get a bounce, a lift from this level. Again, I like to trade a little more ranges and things in currencies because you generally don't see these insane moves like you do with equities and futures and all of this. There's a lot more range trading that can be had. So what I do is I look at this weekly chart for ranges sometimes, and then I'll look at the daily chart. So this is an interesting candle on Aussie CAD on the daily. So if we get a break of this hammer candle, I might just buy some. Again, I'm looking to hold it for a couple days. Again, if I see a clear breakout in a trend like we were talking about with Aussie CAD, then that's great. But if we're just going to play against ranges, then what I'll do is I'll look for areas of support resistance and then buy them if we get candlestick patterns that line that up. Now, let's get into, move this out of the way, get into trade ideas here. Again, link in the description below, showing you a cool feature that they just released where you can create your own heat maps of whatever it is you want to see. For me, these are all the ETFs that I personally watch. And so this is what I want to see to kind of get me a feel of what happened in the market today. So we have Bitcoin, we have biotechs, we have ARK, we have Block, which is a cybersecurity, I think, ETF, and we have another biotechs play. This shows me that there's a lot of risk-off activity today, a lot of risk-off into the close, which is great. It's what you want to see. If you're bullish, you want to see kind of risk-off plays. So let's get into and talk about the individual equity ETFs. We're always going to start. Now that it's interesting, I'm definitely going down the cap trail a lot, which I'll talk about. But the SPY on the S&P 500, we're getting very close to all-time highs here. Very, very close. Sorry, a little tickle in my throat there. But yeah, so we're getting really close to all-time highs. A doji week, I am going to be worried. Now, if go back to the last video on my channel where I talk about the Santa Claus rally if you want to know more about that. So historically, next week's supposed to be a very strong week. However, what I am worried about is a potential morning or evening star pattern. So an evening star pattern is characteristic of an up move and then a kind of doji or sideways move and then a down move after that. And that can be a topping pattern. So, kind of not worried, but if I start to see some weakness going into next week, it might be time to lean on a little bit short or at least take some of the massive gains that I have in some of these names off the table. Not to brag, but you don't have to be a genius to have massive gains on the table right now. With what's happened over the last handful of weeks, you just had to be holding on, which I am. So you can see this massive push up. I'm just looking for reasons now to sell maybe. And if we start to see this evening star pattern start to exist, then it's going to be time for me to take a little bit off the table. If we don't, we're going to hold on. And some evidence that we may not. So we finally got a breakout here in mid caps. Okay, nice. I'm actually going to take a screenshot of that. We actually have a great looking chart here and a breakout in mid caps. And then if we go to IWM, which is small caps, we have, I don't know how I did that. Okay, well, we got a circle now. So we got a breakout here in small caps too. So small caps and mid caps already breaking out. Everything else looks pretty good. So we have ARKK, which is my proxy for like really risky kind of junky stocks. Actual breakout on that as well. Nice push up. But again, we're up a lot in resistance to this one. Taking a look here in URA, a lot of indecision here on the weekly chart. We've got now 5-6 candles in a row where we have topping tails and we have bottoming tails. A lot of indecision, right? So I'm not worried, but it is going to be something I'm going to be cautious about, because if we are going to start breaking down, that's great. Doesn't mean the uranium trade's over. Just might be time to book some profits and move them in and wait for kind of a next trade to occur. Another sector that really stuck out to me here was XME. So this is metal and minings. This will have some to do with what happened with steel and UX Steel and all the steel stocks, and some to do with oil and gas. But it's just a great looking chart here. Nice little breakout. We're seeing that as well. A lot of breakouts, I guess, under the hood. And then I always have to highlight one just to show you the importance of trend trading. And we have KWeb breaking down here. So KWeb looks awful. Everything else looks amazing. Let's go into some individual names, and let's go into the daily chart here. I've got 3 that I'm going to highlight watching into next week. One is this CRSP. The reason for all of these 3 is because I'm looking for, which I talked about on Wednesday, these anchored VWAP pullbacks. So we have a beautiful scan inside Trade Ideas that just shows me all of the stocks that are pulling back to a major anchored VWAP. Again, it's one of my favorite scans just to be able to buy strong stocks that are pulling back and I think could continue their uptrend. This CRISPR Therapeutics 20% short float is interesting to me. I know there was some sort of news on this that caused this rally, and then we had a nice little pullback. So if we end up breaking out of this area right here, I think we can continue with this. Wow. No idea what this company does, but ever since it had this really ugly gap down, it's been hugging this anchored VWAP from its lows, getting really, really tight in through here. You can see a really wide range, then a really tight range. So if this one breaks out, I like the look of that. Then we have ChargePoint. We saw some life out of solar, nothing crazy, but we did see a little bit of life out of solar. This one, for people who know me, know that I don't like buying downtrends, but what I do like doing is looking for stocks that have been in downtrends. They bounce, then they come back and they hold their anchored VWAP from that all-time lows. That's what I'm seeing here in ChargePoint, again with a 35%, a whopping 35% short float. So if we end up holding this anchored VWAP and pushing higher on ChargePoint, that's a trade I'm going to take, because if a third of the float is worried and wrong and it starts to move higher, then that's something that I'm going to look to buy for a potential little short squeeze. Definitely not, going to bet against this trend of this thing at $20 down to $2. But if we can just get a bounce, the 3 or 4, I'll be a happy camper. You just need to know that this must be, to be in a trend like this, a really bad stock. Probably going to go to 0 at some point. But if we can get a couple bounces along the way, that's all I really want to see. All right, everyone. Again, go to StatsEdgeTrading.com, sign up for the email list. Make sure you get the emails. I don't sell them or anything. It's just a great way for me to stay in contact with you. Have a Merry Christmas all. Get away from the screens. Take 3 days. Reset everything. Come back strong on Tuesdays. And I'll talk to you then.